There's this low-key, dull ache that just sits in the back of your mind. It's the constant, nagging feeling that your life is running chronically behind schedule. You look around your feed, and it feels like everyone you grew up with locked in their cheat codes years ago. They've got the career that fits like a glove, a clear direction, a polished version of themselves that feels completely settled. Meanwhile, you're still out here trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, carrying this quiet, exhausting suspicion that maybe you're just fundamentally broken. But what if that exact friction, that feeling of being completely lost, is actually proof that your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do? Carl Jung, one of the most legendary psychologists to ever live, spent his entire career studying people who felt exactly like this. And he didn't look at late bloomers with soft, generic pity. He looked at them clinically. Jung realized that some minds are wired so differently that becoming who they actually are takes twice as long, hurts twice as much, and from the outside looks almost identical to straight-up failing. See, most people build an identity fast. It's efficient. They look at what gets approval, what gets the bag, what makes their parents proud, and they mold themselves right into it. Jung called this the persona, basically a psychological mask you wear for the world. For a lot of people, that mask fits well enough to get them through their 20s with crazy momentum. They accumulate the titles, the relationships, the aesthetics. It looks like a perfect life. But here's the twist the internet forgets to tell you. The people who build themselves the fastest on the outside usually hit a massive wall in midlife that they never saw coming. They ran hard on a track they never checked to see if they actually owned. They built a life. They just forgot to check if it was theirs. They ran up a massive amount of what I call identity debt, and eventually the bill comes due. If you're the type of person who feels left behind, your inner world runs loud. You don't just move through life, you sit with it. You turn it over, analyze the angles, and try to find the actual meaning before you make a move. And in your 20s and 30s, when society is screaming at you to just pick a lane and run, that analytical wiring makes everything 10 times harder. You don't hesitate because you're lazy or rebellious. You hesitate because your brain has a built-in fraud detector. You try to commit to a corporate gig, a relationship, or a specific lifestyle, and something deep inside you just quietly says, no. You can't even explain it, but the internal resistance is so heavy you can't push through it. Jung called this a burden of consciousness. When you're wired this way, you naturally see the gaps between what people say and what they actually mean. You spot the hollowness in goals that everyone else is hyped about. And honestly, it kind of sucks. It's lonely. How do you get genuinely excited about grinding for a milestone when you can already see the cracks in the foundation? So you pull back, you try things, you quit them, you ghost certain spaces. From the outside, you look like someone who just can't get their life together. And if you're not careful, that label starts sticking to the inside of your own head. For a long time, Jung's ideas were purely philosophical. But recently, science actually caught up to him. A major study by researcher Gilles Gignac looked at 16 different psychological traits across adulthood. Things like emotional intelligence, complex judgment, moral reasoning, and the ability to make killer decisions under pressure. The data was wild. Sure, your raw processing speed, how fast your brain can crunch numbers, peaks in your early 20s. But your overall ability to actually function well in the real world? To read a room perfectly, handle high-stakes chaos without snapping, and make genuinely smart calls? That doesn't peak until you are between 55 and 60 years old. Think about how heavy that is. At 30, you aren't even a finished product. At 40, you're still cooking. The most dangerous, capable version of you hasn't even stepped into the room yet. Jung called this deep underground process of building a real self-individuation. While everyone else was putting up cheap, prefab houses on the surface, you've been spending your early decades digging a massive foundation deep underground. It looks like stagnation to the world, but your mind is doing heavy lifting that absolutely cannot be rushed. If you try to force it or speed it up, you don't get success. You just get a version of yourself that completely shatters later down the road. When you stay with the discomfort instead of numbing it out, something beautiful happens around the midpoint of life. The need for outside validation just kind of evaporates. The panic over everyone else's timeline stops hitting so hard. Jung described this as the ultimate turning inward. You stop organizing your day around what society expects and start moving toward what is genuinely yours. For the people who peaked early, this transition hits like a terrifying identity crisis because their mask is cracking. But for you, it feels like an absolute relief. It feels like the real world is finally catching up to the place you've been living in your head for decades. You didn't miss the window. You're just playing a much longer, much more rewarding game. But look, let's keep it 100. You can't do this kind of deep internal building if your baseline is completely fried. If your sleep schedule is trash, your focus is scattered across 5 different tabs, and your dopamine receptors are totally burned out from doom scrolling, you're just trapped in survival mode. You can't find yourself if you're constantly overwhelmed. To help you clear out the mental noise and actually regulate your nervous system, I've put together a complete blueprint. It's a bundle of 20 practical guides and planners designed to reset your dopamine, lock in your sleep, and declutter your daily routine so you actually have the mental space to build what matters. The link is right below in the description and the pinned comment. Check it out, get your baseline right, and give yourself permission to take your time.